And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. In this week's episode, we'll be talking about some very interesting things that's been happening this past week or so. So, to start off, there are many things that we're using in our smartphone devices, and we typically download apps to expedite that process, whether it be for entertainment, for work, or for any sort of activities. But one thing that not many knows, but doesn't give priority is that the apps that we install could be harmful for the users themselves. There are several scam apps that we have, in particular here in Android. So I'm assuming in Apple's App Store as well. There are as much as 10 million apps or scam apps that's proliferating, right now. So if you're an Android user, you'd be kind of concerned, right? And sticking with technology, Apple, on the other hand, is concerned that regarding cybercrime issues, if the App Store themselves is allowed to be uploaded or installed through other third-party means, which is, Apple's makes a strong case, but obviously they have ulterior motives as to why they don't want that to happen. We'll talk about that. Next, we'll be talking also about fast food chains, like McDonald's, to name a few, is choosing to close their indoor seating because of the pandemic that's going on now. Is this good for business? Does it affect their bottom line here? We'll take a look at that. And on the other hand, retailer giant Walmart is planning to hire 150,000 workers for the upcoming holiday. So, if other companies are, letting go of employees, they're doing the opposite because of how big of a demand there is for their services here. Next, we'll be also talking about a car manufacturer, Hyundai, who's known for making cars for people. With the shortage of chips around the world, there have been plans, or they have plans of making their own, so that this doesn't hamper their production process other car companies are experiencing right now. And lastly, some entertainment news. So we'll be talking about how the directors of Avengers Endgame, the Russo brothers, are leaving Disney here. Why is that so? How is it going to affect their work, or in this case, Disney's moving forward here? Anyway, so as mentioned, so we've been using apps, ever since the inception of Android or even Apple devices, as far as we can remember, that the apps are there to help us, provide convenience, provide solutions to a particular problem. But obviously, it's a double-edged sword if you think about it. That for all the benefits that it provides us, there's also the disadvantage of with apps like scam apps, like the platform has provided. But the key question here is the fact that it has hit over 10 million Android devices is kind of concerning here, that there are many apps that's being proliferated, even if Android or Google as a company is doing its part to combat this. But the fact that a lot of individuals have been affected worldwide just goes to show how vulnerable the platform is. And whether it's Apple or even Google here, they still need to do a better job of handling this, because they're generating a lot of revenue out of this, and at the expense of the user here. Anyway, so now there are a lot of apps that could affect your devices here, but the question here is what can be done about this? So let's see here. Or was it? Wait, I can't see here. Oops. So what can be done about this? So if you're using this app, wait, I can't move the screen. What's going on? Huh? Wait, where was it? Can't move the app. Hmm. Wait here. Can't move the app. What's wrong? Anyway, so with regards to the app here, as mentioned, that a lot of people are using applications for whatever reasons that you can think of, for games or even for listening to music and so forth here. Now, according to a researcher here from mobile securities firm Zimperium. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, but anyway, there's a massive scamming that's going on right now, and it's been plaguing the platform for quite some time. So it's not anything new that I'm sure you've heard of it. A question here is, what is the company supposed to do here? Obviously, they need to do a better job of combating this. Now, obviously, it's a cat and mouse uh, debate here, whether obviously for the end user awareness is important here, but for the hackers themselves or those people who are implanting those malware, question is, how do you avoid this and become more prepared here? And obviously the techniques are, a lot of techniques are being utilized here. So typically they send, the mechanism lets you pay for digital services or using SMS service to attract you using social engineering and whatnot. And what's interesting here, that this is an impressive delivery in terms of scale. Obviously this involves money, so it's kind of lucrative for on the hacker standpoint. So obviously in embedding a malware software in the apps, hoping of gaining access to your devices, can be quite alarming here. And this operation spans across 70 nations worldwide. So and they specifically check IP addresses to get a sense uh, of the geographic regions. It would show web pages that location's primary language to make the experience more compelling. So obviously, trying to understand what users prefer and so forth, and takes advantage of that. And obviously, it's going to proliferate until such time that Google or the government steps in, because you know it's pretty concerning if you're a user that relies on their platform, and yet they're that vulnerable to many individuals here. And think about it in a business perspective here, and creating apps for the platform, obviously to benefit the user here, is important. But if a lot of people are apprehensive in terms of using those devices or applications, then obviously it would hurt the bottom line, because which one is fake, which is real. And sorry obviously this is being taking advantage with the getting our information and understanding how people use app the apps per se to gain access to your devices here, which is kind of concerning. And actually there are several, what do you call this, several uh, types of, what the heck was it, let me see, what are the different apps that you need to avoid here. Actually, there's a lot here. I'll leave the link in the description below. There are different app packages that you need to avoid. The example here is uh, .com, .cute, .love, .test, .android. Then you have daily, .wonderful, .moment, daily Coastmaster, .android, dangerous, .writing, .note, data, securite, .data, just to name a few. And they contain Soraka module or derivatives that obviously that attacks your software or devices here, which is not pleasing here. Obviously, on an individual standpoint, it's not concerning, but if you have a business that relies on using those apps, could be dangerous here if typically people sometimes mix and match their personal phone usage and business phone usage here, which is, you know, pretty alarming. And question is, what can Google do on their part to combat this? And whatever they're doing is obviously it's not enough, and hoping that, you know, there should be penalties for, you know, in the case like, you just imagine if cars were not made to specifications and can be hacked. Imagine Tesla could be hacked. Whose fault is this? Is it the fault of the hackers, or is it the fault of the company because they left their software aspect vulnerable, so that, you know, if people were to use their vehicle and if it were hacked, obviously it could catastrophic if there are, you know, nefarious people trying to sabotage or even, you know, put people's lives at risk here. And I think that should be the mentality here. Otherwise, you know, I wouldn't say Google is getting away scot-free in terms of their responsibility just because they have the platform and then they charge those developers a fee and then charging the consumers here at the end of the day. Then they should be held at higher standards here. Anyway, we'll keep you updated with what's happening here, and, you know, what is Google going to do here, going to do about this one. Anyway, for our next topic, we have, you know, along the same line. So you have Androids being penetrated. Obviously, the other part here is Apple here. What's interesting here, on an article here, according to Reuters.com, Apple is warning of cybercrime risk if EU forces it to allow other softwares to be, you know, uploaded or installed through other means. Even the payment is another issue that Apple is contesting here. So obviously, if you're a consumer, you always want choice, so that you can, you know, think of what's a better alternative here, whether it's right or wrong. But having choice is always important, but Apple tries to remove that choice from that individual by obviously lacking in the ecosystem. But obviously, with the recently concluded court case between Epic Games and Apple, wherein the judge sided with the consumer here, that, you know, other developers should be able to offer another means to accept payment here, but that's just for the payment there. But the question here is, in terms of cybersecurity issue or cyber crimes, allowing other softwares to what do you call this, to be enabled or to be installed in other means. Obviously, it's the choice for the consumers at the end of the day. But the question is, what is Apple doing to combat that within their platform? I'm sure it's not just Google's Android system that's being targeted here, especially in the North American region. Apple's ecosystem in terms of, you know, the app dangerous apps that's being proliferated in their ecosystems currently, and how is Apple able to stop all of them, or just some of them? Anyway, let's see here. What was it? So obviously, the coalition for app fairness in where was it? In Europe, which includes, you have Spotify, Match Group, and Epic Games, obviously trying to make arguments as to Apple's monopolistic features or practices. Sorry, that built-in security measures such as encrypted data and antivirus programs provide security to devices, not to its app store. And obviously, the group wants regulators to loosen Apple's grip on its app store so they can bypass it to reach Apple's hundreds of millions of users and try to avoid paying the commission. Now, obviously, that's a totally separate issue, but the point here is, iPhone or the Apple maker is against this, because obviously this is detriment to their business, and saying that, you know, it would affect the consumers, what do you call this, consumer safety here, is another. And what's interesting here, according to the report, if Apple were forced to support side loading, it could be more harmful for apps, would reach users, because it would be easier for cyber criminals to target them even if side loading were limited to third-party apps. So I think regardless, right? So obviously in the platform itself, unless Apple is finding a way to screen those apps that's applying and checking every app that's being installed here. Now, obviously, every day there are new apps that's being installed. That's why it's incumbent for the company, or Apple in this case, to vet every app that's being uploaded here and try to filter out those unwanted apps here, because obviously no one wants that. And if I'm an Apple user, I'll be pro for Apple, limiting, maximizing control here. But they're not doing a great job as it is, because the products that they're offering, the tracking of the iPhone, Apple AirTags, is bordering data privacy here. And then in the apps itself, that there are uh, malicious parties here that's trying to take advantage. And obviously it's up to the platform to ensure the safety of the ecosystem. And if they've not done a better job, then maybe they should be given more opportunities, or for consumers to find other means to install apps that can be considered a more safer environment here, outside of Android, and you have the App Store here. What's interesting here, according to a lawyer, Damien Gerardine, the side loading issue was just a distraction here. Okay. What matters to us is the obligation imposed on developers whose apps sell digital goods and services to use Apple's in-app payments. Again, it's going back to the bottom line. Obviously, it's a big cash cow for Apple here, and obviously, the companies that are developing those apps wants to retain those profit for themselves. So question is, does it benefit the consumer at the end of the day? And whether it's be in the Apple App Store or through other means, if they provide a better product or a better service here, I think doesn't matter where they offer it, right? But on that Apple security claims have no legs. Alternative payment solutions provided by Stripe, Eden, or PayPal are safe as AIP. Obviously, they can always make arguments here over and over, whether pro Apple is right, or anti Apple is right here. And Apple, what's funny, Apple also took a swipe at digital advertisers with whom it has loggerheads over its new privacy controls designed to limit them from tracking iPhone users. So again, the large companies that rely on digital advertising allege that they have lost revenue due to these privacy features. Well, that's not the problem of the consumer here. Obviously, you need to protect the interests of the end user at the end of the day, because Facebook, YouTube, and other tech companies here obviously relies on the advertisement that they generate revenue from there. And obviously, where do they get their information? Obviously from their databases that uses their platform here. Now obviously it's a quid pro quo. If the user benefits from the app, or the service, and then in exchange of your information, then so be it. But to the extent of limiting the access, or what can be done in terms of options for the user, it's a different discussion here altogether. Anyway, so the question here is, will this be a detriment to Apple's bottom line? I think it does eventually, because obviously it's going to hurt their, I think it was reported during the court case between Epic and Apple that they're generating no, not millions, tens of billions of dollars in just the 30% fee here, and stating that that, yeah, that the risk of cybercrime will increase. Well, it's already happening as it is, because of the apps that's being installed in the App Store here. And Apple should be held responsible for allowing it, because if there were no negative, what do you call this, parties involved there, then people would be comfortable and knowing that the platform is safe to be used. So if I download any software, I have 100% confidence that there will be no malicious uh, softwares embedded within it. And obviously Apple cannot claim that, and obviously there should be other alternatives as to where they can download those apps, or whether it be, how they pay for it and use for it uh, for themselves. Anyway, we'll see how that pans out and what Apple plans to do here. Obviously, they have the financial backing and the large resources to fight just about anyone here that they so chooses. Anyway, segueing now to the retail segment, fast food chains now are considering closing the indoor option or indoor seating here in the United States. In many cities, that mandates vaccine checks. Obviously, for many establishments, especially for the food and restaurant industry, requiring vaccination or vaccination card and so forth can be laborious. And obviously for consumers, if you think about it, why would I go to that establishment if they're going to need it? I think it boils down to being responsible here. If you're vaccinated, then you should be allowed to go out, and if you're not vaccinated, then everyone should still wear proper personal protection equipment here, regardless of the not being callous as to, just because you're vaccinated, you don't wear any sort of protection, whether face shield or even face mask. And it goes both ways here. Anyway, let's take a look here. So according to Reuters.com, so fast food chain is closing the indoor. So now, obviously, the indoor seating is a big component. Wait, let's see here. So the indoor component for many, fast foods rely on the indoor or dine-in component. Obviously, they may have features for takeout delivery, but that's not the main brand. It's a supplement, but not the key component. And I think many restaurants are relying for people to come out again and go to their favorite restaurants here. And shutting down here is a big decision. In particular, if you're a big fast food chain like McDonald's here. So let's see here. So you can see here that New York, San Francisco, and other cities around the country in the United States require restaurants to check proof for COVID-19 vaccination, which is, it makes sense, but has every citizen in the country been vaccinated? That's the whole point here. And especially in our country, not even half of the population has been vaccinated. So requiring that would be difficult. Who's going to monitor? And that's going to add additional cost. Anyways, so fast food chains are simply shutting down their seating areas altogether to avoid this issue. Now, obviously, this is going to impact their bottom line or sales. So you have burger chain White Castle shutting down seating sections in more than 20 New York City locations now. For those not familiar, White Castle was very popular, especially when the movie of Harold and Kumar Goes to White Castle, if you remember that movie. Anyway, so obviously it's not just White Castle that's doing this, but other big fast food chain here. And obviously eliminating the dining option, as mentioned here, they have to rely on the takeout service, which is obvious for many is not enough unless you reduce the number of employees in your establishment, which is not a sustainable thing. And obviously the solution here is to find a way to get consumers dining in any particular restaurant here, because at the end of the day, especially in the more upscale restaurants, you could just imagine, obviously getting takeout is possible, but the experience won't be the same. Just like if I ordered in a takeout in a fast food restaurant, is it any different from a more upscale restaurants here? And obviously that's going to be detriment for the restaurants that are operating here. Now you have Taco Bell on the other hand. It encouraged customers to place digital orders for pickup and delivery, so using technology now to expedite the process. But obviously, again, you need to have a lot of takeouts to be able to generate the revenue that you're accustomed even before when people are dining in your establishment. You also have McDonald's on the other hand, are considering multiple factors when they're deciding to close the indoor seating. Obviously, the COVID cases, if it's increasing, could be difficult to manage. And what if if the establishment were blamed because you did not uh, provide the necessary safety protocol, so to speak, then you have to consider the local regulations that a particular state or even region is required, and then you have staffing levels, just to name a few. So it was much better to just simply close the indoor capacity here, and obviously that may change in the future here, but obviously many restaurants have reached a low in terms of, let's see here, restaurants have rebounded from last year's mid-pandemic up to 9% to 400, almost half a trillion dollars here in 12 months. But still, the limiting factor in terms of the requirements of the vaccination is going to be a key difficult part to implement here. Now, obviously, especially for different states that require, if you're going to work, you need to be vaccinated, which is important. But the problem here is how can you regulate that if your customers, whether they bring their vaccination card or not, then you have to implement a system, maybe an online where they can just flash a QR code or something if they're vaccinated or not. Because if you bring a vaccination card, they can be forged here. So meaning people can still lie about it and can be documented. So is it a long-term solution? Maybe not necessarily here. So we'll see if fast food chains will continue to stick with this change of strategy here. Now, on the other hand, speaking of retail giants, you have Walmart, the retail giant in the United States, is planning to hire more people while others are retrenching. So they plan to hire more than 150,000 people to man their stores ahead of the holiday season. Obviously, Walmart is a big retail giant, similar to Amazon. So with the anticipation, despite the pandemic, people still need to buy their basic necessities, and with the upcoming holidays, obviously more people are planning to buy stuff to give for their loved ones and so forth. So question here is, where are they going to get those people, and will they be able to get those in time for the holidays? Anyway, according to CNBC.com, hiring 150,000 people, is is a lot. So let's see here. So obviously, getting more people to handle those, not just security, from cashier, from the supply chain, everyone that is needed within, in a retail operation as big as Walmart here, they're going to need every worker here to handle the increased inflow of customers going into their facilities to buy many things, which is good, right? Anyway, so what's interesting here is the 150,000 that they're going to hire. They plan to hire them as permanent or full time, which is important here. Obviously, hiring 150,000 just for the sake of increasing the inflow of employees may not be ideal, especially if you're trying to find stable job. And obviously, the main issue here right now, I think, is the minimum wage that's being offered for many basic entry level jobs, particularly in the retail or even the food service industry here. Now, what's interesting, retailers have been offering pay raises and other incentives to retain staff to ensure that they have enough workers during the holiday. Now, I think McDonald's tried to offer that, I think, sometime last year by paying them an iPhone, but obviously no one's going to take on that if the risk is too high in terms of the spread of the virus here. But for this case, the they implement 3 wage increase this year by Walmart to as high now as a little over $16, 16.40, which is not bad. Could be higher, but obviously at the end of the day is the benefit here in terms of securing the safety of your employees and your consumers here. And it's the ongoing debate here, not like how what do you call this? Activision is treating its employees, which is a totally different issue in terms of the harassment that the employees that former and current employees are encountering there. Anyway, so what's interesting, Walmart mentioned or announced previously that it would hire an additional of 20,000 workers for its supply chain facilities to permanent roles, as people have increased adopted curbside. Obviously, strategies would differ, but you still need people to man those positions, even if with the likes of Amazon, who's trying to invest more in automation here. But at the end of the day, I think you still need to deal with people here, and until AI reaches a certain point of autonomy, which is years or decades away, or even centuries before it reaches to that point. I think Walmart is on the right strategy of focusing on helping people, not just the consumer but also employees, by providing a better environment for work and for people to buy their products here. And question here is, will other competitors, like in the case of Target, follow suit? Let's see. Actually, Target has said that it's hiring more staff, hiring more store fulfillment experts to better support its in-store pickup. Now, will it be the same as how Walmart is implementing their strategies? We have to wait and see how that pans out. But I think for Walmart, they're on the right traction. Yeah, I think they've been not just focusing on their domestic market, but also trying to invest in India. I think I forget which company they partnered with, so that they can grow their brand not just in the United States but in other countries as well here. Next, we have here, shifting now to automotive. Now, one would think that many of the problems that many of the what do you call this? Many of the what do you call this? Many of the car manufacturers in the past few months, especially that relies on several technological devices for chips to manage the computers within the vehicles, and obviously with the limited chips that is being produced with supply chain constraints. Many car manufacturers have to delay their production, not just EV vehicles from Tesla, from known car manufacturers to GM, Toyota, and whatnot. Now, a company, Hyundai, which is known for many of their vehicles, Hyundai Motor aims to develop their own chips to cut reliance on the chip makers here. Now, how viable is that? But it is what it is. So, according to Reuters.com, so they plan to develop their own chip here, which is kind of difficult if you think about it, because obviously no one, it's not easy being an Intel or an AMD chip maker here, or even Snapdragon here if you think about it. But obviously, developing your own technologies, meaning built in-house, so that if you encounter any supply chain issues from other suppliers, then you can be more self-reliant here, because as mentioned earlier, that many car manufacturers have to rely on the chips that other companies that make, whether it's Intel, AMD, or even TSMC, I think, is the manufacturer for Snapdragon. I could be wrong, but anyway, but the point here is, how can this be addressed? And I think Hyundai is on the right track here of trying to find ways to find better ways to solve this problem, not just in the short term but also in the long term as well here. So, or was it? Oops. So Hyundai Motors global chief said Wednesday that South Korean automaker wants to develop their own chips to reduce reliance on other chip makers here, which is reasonable here, but obviously it's easier said than done. But with the likes of even Apple, who's planning to build their own EV vehicle, has to rely on technologies in particular for the chipsets, which they've already planned on building which they built on their Apple Mac, the M1 chip. So it makes sense for them to go in a different direction and look for a different industry, like in the case of the car manufacturing here. But obviously for Hyundai, investing in chip making is going to be capital intensive, and you need a lot of R&D for this, unless they partner with a chip manufacturer in the first place here to supplement those demands here. And I think other companies or car manufacturers would be looking closely also as to what strategies can they implement to be able to to meet the demands of their customers here. And obviously the demand has been growing and growing steadily with more people preferring to buying. More and more people are starting to buy electric vehicles, and more electric vehicles on the road, more chips that is needed for those vehicles to operate properly, assuming it works as intended, which is another discussion altogether here. Anyway, finally, for our last story here. So, in terms of the movie industry here, there were a lot of issues with how Miss Johansson was suing Disney, and Disney was playing hardball here because it wasn't in the clause here or written in the contract. Well, I guess Disney caved at the end because of the PR nightmare that they're staring up for themselves. Because obviously for Miss Johansson, she has the right to demand or to sue them because of the agreed contract here. Now, obviously Disney's uh, preference to prioritize the promotion of their Disney Plus streaming platform over releasing films over the movie theaters early this year. Well, Black Widow was the guinea pig that had to happen, and eventually they changed strategies since they saw that how poor the performance was. Because even if a lot of people went on to watch in their streaming services, which is have a lot of issues, as I mentioned, make it more restrictive for a lot of people to watch their films, to pay additional fee, not just to subscribe but to pay additional fee to watch their film. That's why the movie theaters is so important, because anyone could watch the film if they wanted to. And obviously the experience is totally different than just watching it at home. And not just that, and if you were to watch it at home, you just have to pay for one subscription, then a lot of people could watch it. And how does that make, you could have a house party watch here, and how does that benefit the streaming services here? You're assuming there's one uh, viewer for each account. Obviously, the if I'm the account holder, I would invite as many people as possible to watch the film. But obviously, watching it in your own television is not the same experience as watching it in the big, movie screen theater, or even in IMAX experience, which I haven't tried it yet. But anyway, so you have the Russo brothers who directed the last installment of the Avengers Endgame here. Is now separating due to what happened earlier, which we were discussing earlier. So according to DK decoding that in, so the issue here is obviously they are more on the creative side, the directors, and seeing how they treated their big stars or Miss Johansson is obviously detrimental. That maybe Disney is not you know being considerate in terms of how it treats its actors or actresses, and then even for directors, those creative people who makes the film possible. Because at the end of the day, no matter what Disney does, you still need creative people to be able to create a great story here. Imagine if Mr. Kevin Feige was not there to helm Marvel Studios from the start to its current state here, which is, I'm sure he's having difficulty here because he's not too happy on what happened here, because obviously it somewhat damages the image of what people perceive as Marvel is, because it's attached to Disney, so and so forth here. Anyway, let's see here. Oops, where the heck is it? There you go. So as you can see here. Oops, where the heck was it? There you go. So the return for they've been making a lot of films for Marvel for quite some time. So you have they've directed Captain America: The Winter Soldier. You have the Civil War, the Infinity War, just to name a few. So meaning they know what they're doing in terms of uh, you know directing in terms of what people want to see in terms of content here. And the question here is, what's going to happen here if Disney doesn't try to resolve this issue? And obviously, the two have already decided to part ways because of the direction that they did. And obviously, the next part or the next phase for the Marvel franchise is, after the Avengers, what's the next part? And the Secret Wars would have been tremendous, but question is, who are the main characters here? And you need a great storytelling here to catch the attention of people. And I don't know, for my taste, I think it's getting too saturated. You've been releasing films after films, for more than a decade already, and expecting people to follow suit. Now, obviously, there's still a demand for those films, but don't expect to get the same experience or same result as it did in the past year. And as it had shown, whether it be, is it because of the pandemic here, you just can see the result here from the release of Black Widow, and then Shang-Chi. Even though it did well domestically, but is it doing well worldwide in terms of expecting to reach $1 billion? Is, I think it's a very unrealistic expectation anyway. So anything above, I think 500 million would be a tremendous success already. Now, question is, moving forward, so from how it performed in the Black Widow film to Shang-Chi and then the Eternals, then it would tell us already, and even moving forward here, then is people's appetite for more Marvel films still there? I mean, I'm interested to watch the last Spider-Man, No Way Home, but who's going to play that character in the future? Is it still Mr. Tom Holland, and will Sony partner still with Marvel? Because obviously they don't have to do that, and that's another issue altogether here. But going back to the directors here, and obviously seeing what has transpired in the past year or so, just gives credence that should they be supporting a company that does not support their actors or actresses here, which is kind of detrimental. Obviously, it's a collaborative aspect here. Now, obviously, Disney Studios or decision makers are focused on the profit side, but obviously you need a creative side, because if there's no creativity here, people doesn't like the content or the movie here, no one's going to watch it, no matter what Disney tries to spin out here in terms of the perception here that they're all for kids and so forth. But really, based on the content that they're providing, obviously some people are fed up with having social issues embedded in films, which is you're not there to watch for that. You're there to be entertained and to escape from reality for even just a little bit. So anyway, we'll see what else is the fallout from the debacle that happened with the Black Widow here. Anyway, I think that concludes our discussion for this week. Anyway, thank you again for watching. Thank you for joining me again. So for more business news, stay here with Business Focus Live. Now, you can also check out my other videos. I also have another segment, Business Update, where I update you regarding the topics that we discuss here. That's every Wednesdays. Also, you can check my other segments. You have guides, tutorials, and tips if you're interested in that one. Anyway, if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Also, you can leave your comments down below if you have any questions regarding today's topic. I'm always interested to hear your comments. As always, I'll see you in the next one. Same time-ish, but more or less same time. Same bad channel. That's it. Okay. Take care.